Today we're going to be writing equations in slope-intercept form given 2 points. So we've got some steps here. First thing that we're going to end up wanting to do is find the slope. So remember, our slope formula is when we take the difference of the y values. So m stands for slope, so we're going to take the difference of two y values over the difference of two x values. So we first have to find that slope. And then from there, we're going to use the slope, and we're just going to take 1 point. So just one of those points, and we're going to write it, those values, the slope of one of those points, into our point slope formula. And so remember, the parts that we put in always go in for, again, the slope, obviously, which is what we just found. And then again, we take one of the points and put it in for y1 and x1. And then once we've done that, then all we have to do is solve for y. When we solve for y, then it's written in the slope-intercept form. And so what we'll end up having is the slope times by x plus the b value, which is our y-intercept. So let's take a look at a few different problems here. First thing we're going to do is find out what the slope of the line is. So I'll write down m equals. Now we're going to take these two y values and write those on top of the fraction. So -2 minus 10. So we always take the difference of two y values. Now since I started with the -2, that first point here, that means I need to start with the x value of that same point. So I'm going to put 1 minus 3. After I do that, now I'm going to change those subtraction problems to addition, since we've got more negative signs than typical. So -2 minus 10 is the same thing as -2 plus -10. 1 minus 3 is the same thing as 1 plus -3. So this is what always changes. Subtraction to addition, next number to its opposite. So go ahead and do that work. Here we have to add those two numbers, makes -12. Here we have to subtract, and we have more negatives than positives, so it makes -2. And this all reduces down to 6 over 1, or just 6. So 6 is our slope, and then we get to pick one of the points. Here's the choice. We get to either pick this point or this point. I typically pick the points that are smaller in number, so I'm going to pick that first one. And I'm going to substitute those values into my point slope formula. And so I'll go ahead and take my slope of 6 and my x value of 1 and my y value of -2 and substitute it in for these values here. So I'll rewrite this as y minus -2 equals 6 times by x minus 1. So I just took the x value, put it in for x1, y value, put it in for y1, slope, put that in for m. Now whenever I have that minus negative, remember that makes a plus positive. And then I'm going to also distribute that 6, the slope, over that difference of x and 1. So what I've got now is y plus 2 equals 6x minus 6. And just one final step there, that is to isolate the y a little further by doing an opposite operation. So there's a plus 2, so I'm going to take 2 away. And I take 2 away, and remember, if we have the same sign, we always add those two numbers together. So then my answer will end up being y equals 6x minus 8. And so there's my slope-intercept form. And what it allows us to do is to graph it fairly easily. Remember, we've got our y-intercept and our slope, so we can graph that line quickly. It gives us a rule for this line given 2 points. So we were given 2 points. Now we've got a rule that makes it so that if we input an x value, we can find y values. Well, let's take a look at the next one here. Same sort of thing as the last problem. We're going to find our slope. So remember, our slope is the difference of the y values. So we just take those two y values, 8 and 6, and we put those on top of the fraction. Then we take, on the bottom of the fraction, the x values, 7 and negative 7. We always start with the same point. So I started with the 8, we need to start with the 7. So it's 7 minus negative 7. And then from there, we need to remember to add the opposite. So 8 minus 6, I think we could figure that out. But if I go ahead and changed it, it would be plus negative. Minus negative makes plus positive. We go ahead and do the work. We've got 2 over 14. Well, we can reduce that down to 1 over 7. So a common mistake is that sometimes people say the slope is just 7. But it's not 7, it's 1/7. Because the bigger number is on the bottom, so we'll have a fraction of a number. Well, from here we need to take our values, one of the points, only need one of them, and we take our slope and we put them into the point slope formula. So we'll go ahead and take maybe, well, I guess we can use this point right here. And so I'm going to take the 7, and this is going to go in for x. The 8 is going to go in for the y. So again, it goes in always for that y1 and x1. So x value in for x1, y value in for y1. Take the slope, and that goes in place of m. So we can go ahead and rewrite what we've got. So we'll start with the y minus 8 equals our slope of 1/7 times by x minus 7. So we go ahead and use that distributive property. And again, I'm multiplying the 1/7 by x, 1/7 by negative 7. So when I do that, I've still got that y minus 8 on the left-hand side. And then this equals 1/7 x. But then I have to multiply 1/7 by 7. So off to the side, I'll do that. 1/7 times by negative 7. And I'll treat that negative 7 as a fraction, negative 7 over 1. And you'll see how some cross-canceling will eliminate those 7's, but I'm still left with negative 1. Well, I just multiply 1 times by negative 1. And that gives me the answer of negative 1. So all I have to do is one final step, and that is to isolate the y by doing another opposite operation. So that's a minus 8, so I'm going to add 8 to all sides. And when I have opposite signs like I have here, then I subtract those two numbers. So opposite signs subtract, same sign you add. And then from there we can rewrite our answer in the slope-intercept form. Y equals 1/7 x plus 7. And there it is. So again, it allows us to graph it fairly quickly using the y-intercept of 7 and then the slope of 1/7. And it also gives us a rule. So whenever we have an input of x, we can do some work and come up with an output of y. Well, here's another one. And here we have our y values first. 2 and negative 23. So we're going to start with those. So again, our slope is a fraction on the top of the fraction. We write 2 minus negative 23. And then we go ahead and write our x values. So our x values are negative 1 and 4. So negative 1 minus 4. And we go ahead and do some work there. Again, always adding the opposite. So when I do that, add the opposite, I end up with a 24, or 25, sorry. And to add 2 to 23, I get 25. And then down below here, negative 1 minus 4, add the opposite, and I end up with two signs that are the same. So I add again. So that makes a negative 5. So when I do that reducing, I get 5 over negative 1, which is the same thing as just negative 5. So negative 5 is our slope that we're going to end up using in the point slope formula. Now typically, you could use any point, well, either of these 2 points, to come up with the equation, but typically you want to use the ones that have smaller numbers. You'll make less errors, but either point is going to give you the same answer. So it doesn't matter which one you pick. I'm going to pick -1 for my x1 value, so again that goes all the way over here into x1. And 2 is going to be my y1 value, so that goes in for the y1. And the slope, -5, goes in for m. So we go ahead and do that substitution, and we've got our equation in point-slope form. So y minus 2 equals the slope of -5 times by x minus -1. So we do some more work there. Add the opposite. When we add the opposite, we'll eliminate those subtraction signs there. So adding minusing negatives, same thing as adding positives. So now we can rewrite the problem as y minus 2 equals -5 times by x plus 1. Well, from this point, all I'm going to do is use that distributive property, multiply -5 over that sum. So when I do that, I end up still with this y minus 2, and now it equals -5x minus 5. So we just have one final step here, and our final step is to isolate the y term. So we're going to do another opposite operation. So the opposite of -2 is +2. So we're going to add 2 to the -5. And again, whenever you have the same or opposite signs in this case, we're going to subtract. Subtract those two numbers, and we'll get our answer in that slope-intercept form, which is y equals -5x minus 3. And there it is. So again, that gives us an equation that we could graph quickly. We can start with the -3 as our y-intercept. -5 is our slope. But it also gives us a rule in which we can substitute inputs in for x to come up with outputs for y. So the next part is going to be a problem in which we have some words associated with it, and we're going to see why we might end up trying to write an equation given 2 points.